Dr. Subbaiah sir to take the stage, please. Dr. Subbaiah sir, my age, experience and knowledge has to improve before I feel myself qualified to praise Dr. Subbaiah garu, the most safest hands I have ever seen in the spinal surgery.
So, good morning everyone, dignitaries on the dais, my colleague orthopedic surgeons and my dear friends. It's indeed a great privilege and pride for me to be associated with you today. And I thank TUTORS Pride and I thank Dr. Kishore for having me here. The mentoring, tutoring is an integral part of anyone's development, for example, not only the sports persons, for us professionals also. I'll tell you my example before probably speaking about mentoring. I had an excellent academic career. So I was the best outgoing student of Andhra Medical College, the university first in MS Orthopedics, and I got n number of gold medals in MBBS. So, no, look, the story is not complete here. So I was very proud man at that moment. I thought I can achieve anything, I can conquer anything. But coming to the medical practice, it's a totally different ball game. And for my further education, training, mentoring, I went abroad to pursue my career in spine surgery. When I went to Switzerland, then I realized the importance of having a proper teacher, proper guide and mentor. And all I learned, in spite of my excellent academic record, I owe everything I do today to my teachers in, not only here in India, but those who taught me spine surgery in Switzerland, Sweden and Germany. So that is the importance of having a proper mentor, tutor. Dr. Manam is talking about probably you learn 25% from the teachers, but I believe that 25% is probably the most important learning you get from a teacher. So with this introduction, I think I wish the TUTORS Pride all the best, and I wish all the delegates. This is a great platform. You have some of the eminent, Ajay is an expert in sports injuries. He took his time out to be here today. So take the opportunity to learn maximum from these top-class faculty members. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So as I said, I would like to thank TUTORS Pride, Dr. Kishore for having me here. When Dr. Kishore approached me and he said, you need to speak to the coaches, the trainers. I think this is the first time I'm actually speaking to sports coaches and trainers. I spoke to a group of physiotherapists before, and of course the next slide. So sports injuries to the back I mean the spine from top down, from the neck down to the player gets injured. To attend to the patient. Common sports injuries to the spine. And the second most common injury to the spine is, of course, either overuse or repetitive injuries to a particular part of the spine. I'll quote an example from the shoulder. Say, for example, if you're a fast bowler or a bowler, for that matter, so you will be using the shoulder repetitively, or you will be kind of overusing it. So there is a strong possibility that you might develop some sort of a shoulder injury. The same is true with the spine. Say, for example, a fast bowler lands repeatedly and obviously on the knees, the sports person says they're fit. Obviously, they're very fit people. and if they develop any back pain, they say, it's easier for me, I can get over it. So this is the attitude I've seen with a lot of the sports persons. So narrowing, so the nerves going out from the neck into the hands, if they're compressed anywhere in their course, so that's what we call cervical spinal stenosis. So these are the injuries we see in sports persons. Next slide. Yeah. So the mechanism of injury to the neck. So these are some of the common mechanisms of injury to the cervical spine. So the acceleration injuries, the deceleration injuries, and the spearing in. So I'll explain a little bit about the acceleration injuries. Say for example, if you are running fast, that is as you are accelerating towards your goal, if you hit something, or if you hit your the other team's sports person, so that's when you get acceleration injuries. And the most common acceleration injury is what happens if you hit someone, your neck goes into hyperextension, something like this. So that's when you tend to get what we call whiplash injuries. And whiplash injury is a big topic, but you can injure your neck muscles, you can injure your ligaments, you can injure your bones, and you can fractures, of course, of the neck, especially neck, are very dangerous and can give you some amount of obviously severe pain and some amount of weakness of the hands or the legs. The spearing in is, I don't know whether probably this is seen in American football, something like that. If the contact point is your head, if you are hitting someone with your head, that is what we call the spearing in. What happens in spearing in is, normally the cervical spine has what we call some amount of lordosis, some amount of curvature. So once your neck goes into some spearing in mode, like this goes into flexion, so that is when the cervical spine is at its most vulnerable situation. So you can end up in major injuries. Again, problem we see in sports persons, it is not commonly seen in the general population. If the neck suddenly goes into hyperextension or sideways like this, normal, and then that is when you get a stretch on the nerves coming to the hands. These are all the nerves that come from each level. They form a group bunch of nerves, and this bunch is known as brachial plexus, and all these nerves, they go into the hand. So these nerves get stretched. This is what we call cervical stingers, and these people have severe neck pain. So this is when the role of I should not say team physician, probably the role of a coach, the role of a team physiotherapist, team physician comes in. Thing is, the moment the sports person gets injured, so you should be able to identify the problem first thing on field. So the coach rushes in to attend to the sports person. You should be able to identify what happened to the sports person. So you should be able to assess the situation properly. Then you should have a proper understanding how to immobilize the sports person, and the mode of transportation to probably the nearby clinic or nearby hospital plays a critical role. The reason why I speak about the immobilization and transportation is, most of the spinal, it's a well-known fact that in road traffic accidents, people can have fractures of the spine, but nothing more often than not, nothing happens to the individual. But we see a lot of people, they carry the patient, they probably put them in an auto or some car, and then transport the patient to the hospital. So that's when the injury happens. So importance of immobilizing the part, whichever part is involved, method of transportation to a nearby clinic, nearby hospital is very, very important. And again, the role of a team coach comes once the sports person recovers from the injury. when to put him back into the field. So what time, what amount of layoff he requires. So when can he quickly comes back into the sports field. So this is the role of a coach, the team of physiotherapists, team of physician. This is the role they play. Next slide, please. And again, I keep talking about the preventive aspects. The important thing is making the sports person understand the problems and then work with him to prevent these problems. If at all, if he develops an injury, again working with him to prevent second injury, repetitive injury. So these things are very, very critical. Next slide.
Can I ask a question, sir?
Yes.
Sir, accident on the field, the person dies from Ecuador, player died on field. So what could be the reason of the death? Is it because of the hit of the ball or not proper position of hitting the ball? What could be the...
No, what I mean, I didn't get you. Can you just repeat the question?
A person from Ecuador, a player from Ecuador was playing football on the field. He was aged about 32 years and he died on field hitting a ball. Is it because of the earlier cervical string, what you say?
No, we just do not know what could be. I mean, there could be multiple causes. So one cause could be, injury to the cervical spine, especially the upper cervical spine, upper part of the neck, wherein you have, upper part is C1, C2, and even the connection between the head, what we call occiput, and the neck. So this is where even a small injury can take your life away. So, C1-2 injuries or occipitocervical injuries can be really fatal and catastrophic. One. The second thing is if the patient has a minor injury, let's say at C2-3, the next, second and third bones, and there is an improper mode of transportation, it can definitely injure the cervical spine. And that part of the spine is important for the respiratory muscles. The muscles responsible for our respiration, and the respiration can stop and the patient can die. So these could be the causes. Okay, so unless we see the X-rays or the CT scans, MRI scans, so we just cannot say. But these could be the causes. One of the causes could be there, right? So I remember one incident. I treated one diver. The people who dive from above into the swimming pool. He dived directly, hit the pavement with the head directly. He had a fracture dislocation of the cervical spine. He was completely paralytic. He paralyzed below the neck. So he lost both the upper limbs and both the lower limbs. Even though we operated, we could not salvage that person. We could not make him recover from the paralysis of both the hands and legs. So these are some of the sports wherein you can have an injury to the cervical spine.
So what could be the cause?
So he had a fracture of one of the bones in the neck.
The injury should be majorly here on the head, right?
Now what happened in his case, so it's an indirect injury, what we call an axial compression.
Yes.
So for example, it is compressed like this. So he had a fracture of one of the bones in the cervical spine. Again, because I spoke about the diving and the cervical, coaches should be aware of these things, possibilities. And even the swimmers, while they dive into the swimming pool, they can hit the floor of the swimming pool and can have injuries of the neck. So they should be aware of these problems and then train the sports persons accordingly.
On the same football follow-up question here. So how to hit a ball with head in that case, if there is such a risk involved?
I do not know. You people should coach the people, but it's not about odd object. If you hit probably the opposite team's person with some amount of acceleration, that is probably you can injure severe injuries. The minor injuries like the muscle injuries and ligament injuries can happen if you don't obviously follow the basic principles of.
Mainly when we hit a ball when playing football.
Yeah, just please, may I take your
Yeah, of course, yes.
So actually, this is yes, cycling. I said this. I want to say, and I said sports coaching. So I'm qualified coach in football. So these are headers. Actually, before going participate and go for the vigorous heading or headers in the real format, there must be training. This header training is the ball will throw slowly and hard, so that we are giving the time physical time to the core muscles which are keeping the neck straight. So until there is a time for the neck muscles, should not go for the headers. If so, what's the compression, due to compression, something is cervical and all this nerves get injured and they will fall. So before that, you must have a good physical trainer and qualified coach. Then only can train you better. Unless there is a qualified coach, you will get injured. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Person will have a low back pain, and this typically happens with activity. And if that particular person takes rest, the pain usually disappears. So this is a typical complaint if the patient has a strain or a sprain. So what to do then, as a coach or a physical trainer? The first thing you have to do is to take away the sports person from the sports for a period. And if it is an acute injury, probably apply some sort of an ice to the affected area, give some medication to reduce the pain. And as the pain comes down, you put him back onto the stretching exercises, the aerobic exercises, and even the strengthening exercises, and slowly try to get the particular athlete into the field. So these are very common injuries. They have pain at the affected area with activity, and as the athlete takes rest, the pain goes away. So this is how probably a simple way of managing the strains and strains. The next slide. The stress fractures, I spoke about it. The stress fracture is, I'll speak about a little bit of stress fracture of the foot. So if I'm not used to walking, say for example, I'm not a regular walker, and if I walk for let's say unaccustomed walking for about let's say 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, because of unaccustomed activity or over usage of that particular part. The same thing can happen in the spine. One of the classical examples who have stress fractures of the spine, I don't know whether you heard about Varun Aran. Varun Aran had multiple stress fractures of the vertebral body. He had to be taken away from bowling, fast bowling, for quite a period of time till the fractures have healed, and they had to recondition him, and then he had to change his run up and then get back to field. So unaccustomed activity, over usage, improper muscle conditioning, probably lack of proper strength in that particular muscles can lead to the stress fractures, and you have to work around those muscles, work with those muscles to improve the strength, to avoid the stress fracture. If the fracture happens anyway, we are there to treat it. It can be treated very easily. So these are the problems in the lower back. These stress fractures can even happen in what we call the dorsal spine. The spine just behind your chest is what we call the dorsal spine. Next slide, please. The disc injuries. Disc is an important part of the spine. This is the cross section. Normally, if you look at the anatomy of the spine, you have the bones. These bones are what we call the vertebrae. And between every two bones, you have a small cushion-like structure. That is what we call an intervertebral disc. It's a soft cushion-like structure which acts like a shock absorber between the two bones. And the disc problems are very common in normal individuals, and much more so in athletic persons. What happens, what could be the cause for the disc injury in normal individuals is not clearly known. But the smokers have a higher incidence of disc injuries in general population. But if you come to the sports, the repetitive forward bending, the repetitive lifting of the weights, and if the patient has a repetitive twisting of the trunk, not patient, I should not say patient, the sports person, is involved in repetitive twisting of the trunk, can result in disc injury. I was watching one of the cricket. I'm an ardent follower of cricket. I used to watch it on the television. I remember this spin bowler from South Africa. Who is that? Paul Adams.
he has a peculiar action. He twists his trunk, and when I saw his action first time, I thought, he's the one who is going to develop disc injuries very quickly. He actually had it, and he had to cut down his career, and then he's out of the game. So these are the things you should know. And what happens to the individual if they have a disc injury disc injuries could be multiple types of injuries. The disc has what we call an outer layer. This is like an egg. The outer layer is a very hard like structure, and inner one is a jelly-like thing. So sometimes what happens, the patient can have a small tear in this what we call an annulus, outer part of the disc, and that can lead to severe low back pain. And most of the people just pain comes down with few days of medication and little bit of activity away from the field. So that is an annular tear. Sometimes what happens, the inner part can come out through the outer layer. This is what we call a disc herniation. And this can cause back pain and the pain radiating down into the legs. And there are multiple ways of treating it, and the treatment probably is not an important part for you. But you should know about what is a disc and what are the things that can cause injury to the disc. So these disc injuries are very common in the lower back. Next slide, please. So this is a common problem, spondylolysis. So you should know a little bit about the normal structure of the spine. The low back, this is how the low back looks. This is towards our tummy, and this is towards our back. I spoke about the bones. These are the bones in the back. And I mentioned about the disc between the two bones. This is the disc. And between every two bones, you have a sort of connection behind the back. And this connection is what we call pars interarticularis. You don't have to know about this, but there is a connection between these two bones. So if there is a breakage in this connection, that is when what we call it spondylolysis. And because of this breakage, these two bones are not stable over each other. They can slip over each other, and then they can, that is when what we call it spondylolisthesis. And this is common in this spondylolysis is very common in sports persons. Any activity which is involved with any person who is involved in hyperextension of the spine, gymnasts, volleyball players, basketball players, fast bowlers, they get these injuries. I treated one, I don't name the cricketer, IPL, he played IPL for Hyderabad. He played for India actually. He's still playing for India, fast bowler from Hyderabad. Yeah, he came to me with spondylolysis, he came to me with back pain. And we just rehabilitated him, and we just taught him, especially at the jump, they hyperextend the spine. So I interacted with the coach, and they changed his action a little bit. So he had this problem, and he had to go to Australia for rehabilitation. So this is a very, very common problem which we see in sports persons. And some of them, they might end up even in surgery. We operate these patients. Some of them, those who do not get better with the physical measures, so we operate these patients. Next slide.
So one question. So how much of twisting is good?
Twisting is never good, but
I'm planning to start on yoga training. So most of the yogasanas, rather some of the yogasanas have bending, downward bending or backward bending, and sometimes some asanas include twisting of the spine itself. So how to know what amount of twisting is good, and beyond that limit it is bad?
Well, we cannot quantify how much of they always put strain on the back, okay? And I'm not a great advisor of yogasana. Some of the yogasanas, my asanas might be good, but some of the asanas, I'm very critical about some of the asanas which take the spine into hyperextension, the twisting of the spine. I'm extremely critical actually. So for sure they put enormous stress on the lower, for sure, enormous stress on the lower back. So if you, I don't know about the sports persons involved in yoga, but it's sort of meditation, stretching, strengthening, those things are definitely good. But yogasanas, some of them are extremely critical.
I can answer them.
Yeah, of course.
In my facility. With your permission.
Sir.
So, different.
Sir. I promise you will be with
Yeah, differently.
That's right.
I will also.
With Subbaiah sir, it is too difficult for Subbaiah sir to come all the way from the top.
So these are some of the common sports injuries we see in the spine. But the take-home message for all of you as coaches and trainers would be, when you have to pay attention to, you should be understanding the problems, you should have knowledge about the common spine problems, so that you can pay attention to the prevention of these problems. Because some of these problems can be very catastrophic, as I mentioned. The one diver who ended up being paralytic completely below the neck. So, and then the important thing is, I always find the decision making of a coach. So once the sports person is injured, so how to, when to get him back into the field is probably very critical. And I think this is the essential knowledge about the sports injuries, and then how to probably identify them and how to treat them. Thank you very much.
May I have last one? Can you suggest some books?
I don't know. So probably I should write one.
Oh, please.
I'm not sure about the sports injuries. We have fantastic textbooks of spine surgery, which are for, so I don't know. So probably for coaches, I think we should write one book. I don't know whether Ajay must be aware of these things. If there are any books for the coaches, so that for the understanding of for the sorry about this understanding of the coaches.
Coaching Excellence.
Coaching
It is a
Excellence.
book. It is very good for coaches. Available on Amazon.
Okay. I don't know about the spine things.
It's a privilege to listen to you, sir. I have a small doubt, sir. I'm proud to say we have 3 athletes from Hyderabad representing in Commonwealth Games, sir. And 2 I know, so many athletes, I know 3 of them. One is Aruna Reddy, gymnast, and I'm the former honorary consultant to Indian Gymnastics. There are 3 different federations. Their associations are different, sir. For one of the association, I'm with them. And thanks to Ajay sir, I supported Telugu Titans as well for some time. And another one is in rhythmic gymnast, Magna Reddy. I'm so proud of Magna Reddy. She's 18-year-old girl, sir, around 18. And they fought for qualifying competitions in India in rhythmic gymnastics. And she's world class. And another young girl, sir, another gymnast. Sir, we were discussing the other day.
Garikapati Ananya.
Ananya Garikapati. There's another rising star.
Garikapati Ananya.
She narrowly missed that Commonwealth. But I wanted to say that there is an increasing participation in international level from the athletes. Aruna Reddy recently got the bronze in World Championship in gymnastics. She's a proud girl, sir. I saw her practicing. I saw her at National Games last time, which conducted at Tirunelveli. I'm supporting gymnastics arena at that time in Tirunelveli. And Magna. The point I wanted to mention here is, for normal people it is different. For rhythmic gymnasts, the range they take up, the stretch they do, I'm sometimes afraid with the amount of back pain and other issues we treat. She's just like rubber. You type in, you see probably Magna, and they're fantastic. So what I wanted to know, sir, my little research suggests that these back pains are mostly from the listhesis. Spondylolisthesis from the repetitive rotational extension stress, and at the time they are in the teenagers. But early listhesis is not, it cannot be identified in a standard MRI. Then that will be established when they are grown up, and then people will have a little longer difficulty. What is the common age group, sir? And if the investigations available are not conclusive, what are the guidelines for us from you?
Question actually, and this is something probably I can easily talk on. Now, thing is, the pain, the first part of your question, the pain coming from the listhesis rather than the lysis. Anything can give pain. Spondylolysis itself can give pain, and they can have acute pain, acute low back pain. I remember one patient I treated, a young girl who came to me with severe low back pain, and she was crying in severe pain. We gave a local anesthetic into that defect which I've shown in my presentation. Pain just disappeared. So the pain can be because of spondylolysis and spondylolisthesis. The age group, especially these kind of injuries, usually we see between 10 and 15 years. Usually, it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen before 10 years or it doesn't happen beyond 15 years. So the common age is somewhere between 10 and 15 years. I do agree that the bones are not clearly seen. This is a bony problem. So bones are not clearly seen on the MRI scan. But if you're an expert, I can visualize lysis on MRI. I can see that. But I tell you, you should have the eyes of a spine surgeon, then only you can see that. The second thing is these bony defects are clearly seen on the X-rays. So that is the reason you should not straight away go for the MRI scans if you are evaluating any patient with low back pain. So you have to have the X-rays first and then the MRI scan. And then if you have a strong suspicion, that the patient has spondylolysis, so then for us to visualize the bones, CT scan is the best, not the MRI scan. So the pain part is could be lysis, as we discussed. The common age is between 10 and 15 years. And if you are vigilant, you can visualize these defects on the MRI also. But the X-rays are mandatory. And then if you have a suspicion, have a CT scan and you will be able to see the defects.
Precautions, sir, advice. There is a reason, sir.
Yeah.
They say, sir, I am training in Uzbekistan this week. Next week I will be in India. And after that week I have training in Dubai. And for 10 more days they have a tournament somewhere in Malaysia. So they'll hardly give me 2 days. And she'll come like that. And she says, I have to jump and my repetition is 200 times. The same activity what she is practicing. It's like throwing a ring and she has to catch it specifically on time. Precisely on time. It's horrible repetition.
Yeah. So the gymnast, I was reading this paper published last year. The incidence of these defects which I've shown in gymnasts is close to 45% they reported, 50, close to 50%. That means 1 out of 2 gymnasts, definitely they have a defect. And the incidence of this in general population is just about 2%. So that tells me, if you are choosing, gymnasts, what is this? Gymnastics as a profession, you are at risk of developing this issue. So, and the prevention, hyperextension, I mean gymnasts, when they live with hyperextension of the spine, they have to extend the spine. The important, probably the important point for the coaches, trainers is to strengthen the flexors of the spine. So if you focus on strengthening the flexors, so probably that helps in preventing these injuries. So again, stressing the need for the coaches to understand the problem, especially if you are coaching people who take the spine into hyperextension. I told you, I treated one IPL player who played for India recently in South Africa, fast bowler. So we worked with his muscles quite a bit, and he's fit, and he played last 1 month back in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. I would like to wish all our players, Sarna, Meghna, and Rajni, a hockey player from Sarvanagar Stadium. I got an opportunity to support all the three of them, sir. And I would like to introduce one more rising star from tennis, the 18-year-old Krishna Teja Ankam, our own boy. Sir is hiding him. Ankam's her son. He went up to All India Tennis Association men's finals at the age of 18. And you know, sir, what he made? It's a Guinness Book of Record, 4 hour 20 minutes match, sir. And an 18-year-old boy at men's semis, if I'm right, please correct me.
Finals. He's a runner-up.
He is
Today he's in final again.
Again, he is playing another final, sir. He is still 18, and we are going to have another star in tennis. I mean, Ankam sir is a man of words. And before that, Ankam sir had around more than 25 academic institutions. I asked her, sir, I usually take my kids into my profession. And sir sacrificed everything and put him into sports and lot of training into it. And that just shows, it's not just on the thing, but inside that. I have seen him, I know him very well. But I thought this is the right platform to share that good news. And
I'm not a physical sports person, but I played chess at a slightly higher level. Probably the platform to share my, I should not say sporting excellence. So when I was in my MBBS, so I'm adding my MBBS in Vizag, Andhra Medical College.
how many goals, sir, please, from
MBBS, I got that. So that is the.
సుబ్బయ్య గారు పై కనిపించే 5 ఫీట్ల దాకా లోపల 5 ఫీట్లు ఉన్నారు.
During my MBBS days, I used to play for YMCA chess. I used to play on the top board all the time, and I was 3 years consecutive district chess champion, Vizag champion. And that time, and then it was then my ambition was I wanted to become a grandmaster.
But you have become the grandmaster of spine surgery.
Yeah. Then as a district chess champion, so I qualified for state. I played state A. They used to have, I don't know, now they have, what's the format they have. So I played state A, and then I played national B also, chess. So I played nationals chess. So that is my sporting, I should not say sporting career, some sort of sports. Thank you.
Vishwanathan Anand is very lucky because sir is into surgeries.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, I'd like to request.
Pushpa?
Sir, please join.
హలో సార్, నా పేరు గోపీచంద్ అండి, రోడ్స్పేట్ జనరల్ మేనేజర్ మాట్లాడుతున్నాను. నేను ఒక చిన్న డిస్కషన్ వచ్చింది. ఎవరెవరు గెస్ట్ వస్తున్నారు సార్ అంటే సుబ్బయ్య సారే వస్తున్నారని చెప్పారు. ఏంటి సుబ్బయ్య సార్ అంటే మన ఇండియాలో అంటే ఒకరో ఇద్దరు ఉన్నారంట, వెన్నుముక 3 ముక్కలైనా సరే ఒక 2 రోజుల్లో వాళ్ళని నుంచోబెడతారంట. అలాంటి